Chapter 5. The Leaders of Israel. After the era of the patriarchs came the era of the leaders of Israel, Moses and Joshua. Their stories are told in the books of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Joshua. Moses, circa 1400 BCE. Moses was born after all the generations of Joseph and the rest of the brothers died. They still lived in Egypt and had multiplied numerously. During this era, the old Pharaoh, who favored Joseph, was already gone as well, and replaced by a new Pharaoh, who was concerned about the military implications of the large increase in the Israelite population. So he enslaved and oppressed them with forced labor, but the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied. Then he ordered 2 Hebrew midwives to kill all male newborn. But the midwives feared God, so they did not follow the order. They said to the Pharaoh that Israelite women were stronger than Egyptian women, that they gave birth to their babies before they even arrived. Thus, Pharaoh would charge all his people to cast all Hebrew male babies into the river, while letting the female babies alive. Moses was a son of a Levite man called Amram. The Levites are the descendants of Levi, one of the 12 forefathers of Israelite tribes, who were prophesied by Jacob to be scattered all over Israel, and finally destined to hold the position of priesthood among the Israelites. Moses had 2 other siblings mentioned in the Old Testament, a sister called Miriam and a brother called Aaron. When Moses was still a baby, his mother placed him in an ark of bulrushes and laid it by the river's brink to keep him safe from the Pharaoh. Moses' sister stood afar to see what was going to happen to him. Pharaoh's daughter discovered him while bathing and felt sorry for the Hebrew baby. Moses' sister offered Pharaoh's daughter to call her own mother and nurse the baby. Pharaoh's daughter agreed. From then on, she adopted the baby and gave him the name Moses, which means, "I drew him out of the water." Moses killed an Egyptian. One day, after Moses had grown up, he killed an Egyptian who was abusing a Hebrew man. When his crime was discovered, Pharaoh wanted to kill him, so Moses fled to Midian. Note, it is believed to be in northwest Arabia on the east shore of the Gulf of Aqaba. Some scholars say it was not a geographical area, but a league of tribes. The Midianites were the descendants of Abraham from his concubine Keturah. In Midian, Moses sat down by a well. 7 daughters of Jethro, a priest of Midian, came to draw water for their father's flock. Some shepherd came along and drove them away. Moses rescued them and watered their flock. This was how Moses met Jethro, who then gave Moses one of his daughters, Zipporah, to marry. Then the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel cried to God because of the bondage. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked down upon the children of Israel and was concerned about them. Moses and the burning bush. One day, Moses was tending the flock of Jethro. He came to Horeb, the mountain of God, presumably the same as Mount Sinai in Sinai Peninsula, Egypt. God appeared to him in a burning bush. "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." God told Moses that he is the God of Israel and would send Moses to Pharaoh to deliver the Israelites out of the oppression in Egypt. When Moses asked God, whom he would say had sent him, God said to Moses, "I am who I am." In Hebrew, it's Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. This is what you're supposed to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God promised to deliver Israel into a land flowing with milk and honey, the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the descendants of the black Ham. God told Moses that the Israelites would listen to him, but God would harden Pharaoh's heart so he would refuse to let them go. Then God would smite Egypt with all of his wonders, and Moses would not go empty-handed, for Moses would spoil the Egyptians. So Moses took his family away from Jethro's house and returned to Egypt. On the way to Egypt, at the lodging place, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. Zipporah took a flint knife and circumcised her son, and touched Moses' feet with a foreskin. So the Lord let him alone. Aaron met Moses at the mountain. They went to meet the elders of the Israelites. Aaron told them about Moses' meeting with the Lord. When they heard that God was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. Moses and Aaron confronted Pharaoh. Afterwards, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "Thus said the Lord God of Israel, Let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness." Pharaoh refused to let the Israelites go, and instead commanded them that they no longer be given straw to make brick. They must gather the straw themselves, but still produce the same quota. Pharaoh asked Moses and Aaron for a miracle, and as God has commanded, Aaron threw down his staff, and it became a snake. The sorcerers and the magicians then duplicate this feat. They threw down their own staffs, and they too become snakes. But Aaron's snake ate the other snakes. Still, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused to let Israel go. Then Moses, upon God's command, performed several inflictions. He turned the waters into blood, sent hordes of frogs, turned dust into a mass of lice, plague of flies, induced boils on Egyptian men and livestock, plague of locust, shower of hail and fire, brought darkness for 3 days, and the final plague was death of all Egyptian firstborn males, including the throne prince of the Pharaoh, and of all the firstborn male beasts. This was to be the punishment for Egypt for not letting Israel, God's firstborn, to go and worship him, and to hold a festival for him in the desert. Finally, the last plague caused Pharaoh to send the Israelites away, and God ordered Moses to borrow all jewels of silver and gold and to prepare the people to leave. The sojourn of the Hebrews in Egypt was 430 years. The Exodus. God commanded Moses to teach the celebration of Pesach or Passover to his people. This event became the beginning of the new Hebrew calendar. On the 10th of this month, every house had to take a lamb, sheep, or goat. It had to be a male of 1 year old without blemish. On the 14th of the month, it had to be slaughtered. Then the blood was to be struck on the side and top of the door. The meat was to be roasted and eaten on the same night with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Whatever was left had to be burnt the next morning. They had to eat with their loins girded, wearing shoes, staff in their hands, and they had to eat in haste. Then God would pass through Egypt and smite all the firstborns of Egypt, and would pass over all the houses where there was blood on the door. Then the children of Israel started the Exodus, moving out of Egypt. There were 600,000 men, not including the children, journeying from Ramses, a city in Egypt, to Sukkot, east of Jordan River. They spoiled the Egyptians and took their silver and gold jewelries. Led by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, the Israelites continued their journey into the desert, carefully avoiding the war-torn land of the Philistines, through the wilderness of the Red Sea. Pharaoh pursued them with 600 chariots. When the Israelites saw the Egyptians approaching, they became frightened, and they blamed Moses for bringing them out of Egypt. Moses stretched out his staff and divided the sea. The angel of God and the pillar of cloud moved between the Israelites and the Egyptians, separating them. God sent a strong east wind, and the Israelites entered the sea on dry ground, while water rose like a wall on the right and left sides. The Egyptians followed them, but God commanded Moses to stretch out his staff again, and the waters returned, covering the chariots. But the Israelites managed to cross the sea. After the passage of the Red Sea, Moses and the people of Israel rejoiced. Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Moses and Aaron, took a timber in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. And they said, "The Lord is my strength and song. He is my salvation. He is my God, my father's God. I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Who is like unto thee, O Lord, among the gods? Thou stretched out thy right hand, the earth swallowed them. Thou in thy mercy hast led forth the people which thou hast redeemed. Thou hast guided them into thy strength, unto thy holy habitation. The people shall hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold on the inhabitants of Palestine. Then the dukes of Edom shall be amazed. The mighty men of Moab trembling shall take hold upon them. All the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away." The 10 Commandments. On the 3rd month, the Israelites arrived at Mount Sinai. On the 3rd day, Mount Sinai was smoking. God descended upon it in fire, and the mountain quaked greatly. Then the sound of trumpet came, waxed louder and louder. Moses went up the mountain. God set forth the 10 Commandments concerning man's relationship with God and man's relationship to each other. The 10 Commandments were written on 2 stone tablets. Moses wrote all the words of God. Then he built an altar under the hill the day after. He offered burnt offerings and sacrificed oxen unto God. He sprinkled half of the blood on the altar, while the other half he sprinkled on the people as a token of their covenant to God. Then Moses and the same companies went up again, and they saw God of Israel with his feet on top of a paved work of sapphire stone. Moses went into the mountain which was covered by cloud to receive tablets of stone with the law and commandments of God. Moses stayed in the mountain for 40 days and nights and fasted with no food or water. Then God instructed Moses to build the tabernacle, a rectangular portable worship facility consisting of a tent draped with colorful curtains, which had to be erected when they camped, oriented to the east. Inside the tabernacle were 3 pieces of sacred furniture: a 7-branch oil lamp stand called menorah of pure gold, a table for 12 loaves of showbread, and an altar for incense burning. In a cube-shaped inner room known as the Holy of Holies was a box or cabinet called the Ark of the Covenant, inside of which were the 2 stone tablets on which were written the 10 Commandments. The golden calf. Meanwhile, the people, impatient for Moses' return, implored Aaron to make them a god. Aaron told them to collect their gold, then he molded a golden calf. He said to them that it was their god, and built an altar for it. Then he proclaimed the day after to be a feast to the god. So the next day they offered burnt offerings. They ate, drank, played, and danced. God was angry and wanted to consume the ungrateful people whom he had helped get out of Egypt. Moses implored God not to do so, calling on God to remember his oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So God repented of the evil which he thought to do unto his people. Then Moses went down the mountain bearing the 2 tablets, and he saw the people were naked. He became enraged and shattered the tablets. Moses burnt the calf, ground it to powder, threw it upon the water, and made the Israelites drink it. All the Levites at Moses' instruction killed 3,000 people for their sin, and God punished the remaining sinners by means of a plague. God decided not to go in their midst, for they were stiff-necked people, and the Israelites went into mourning. Moses erected the tabernacle outside the camp, and entered to speak to God face to face. Then a cloudy pillar descended. All the people saw that and worshipped. Moses asked God to lead the people, and God agreed. Moses asked God to let him see God's presence, but God explained that no human could see God's face and live. God instructed Moses to station himself on a rock, where God would cover him with his hand until he had passed, at which point Moses could see God's back. Then God commanded Moses to hew another 2 tablets of stone, for him to write the commandments again and replace the broken ones. Moses proclaimed, "The Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth." Then Moses bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. God made a covenant with Moses that he would do marvels before the children of Israel, if they keep his commandment. The children of Israel were not allowed to make a covenant, nor intermarry with the descendants of Black Ham. Israelites had to destroy their altars and idols. Israelites were forbidden to worship no other god, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. After the tabernacle was ready, the cloud covered the tabernacle, and God's presence filled it. Thus the Israelites continued their journey and traveled only when the cloud was lifted from the tabernacle. God's cloud rested over it by day, and fire appeared in it by night. The complaint of the Israelites. While in the wilderness, the Israelites complained several times. Note: the stories are detailed, and it happened on many different occasions and places. It gets confusing when I retell the stories of the complaints of the Israelites during the Exodus chronologically. So here is the summary of the complaints. They complained because of the difficulty and lack of variety of food, lack of water, and they argued about the authority of Moses and Aaron. As a consequence, God punished them several times by fire. Then he sent quails for meat, but while the flesh was still between the Israelites' teeth, God smote many of them. When they complained that there was no food, God sent venomous snakes that bit many of them to death. Moses prayed for redemption, and God commanded him to make a bronze snake and put it on a pole. The ones who got bitten and looked on the bronze snake lived. Then Moses appointed Aaron and the Levites, the tribe of Moses and Aaron, to be in charge of the tabernacle and hold the priesthood position all over Israel. They are entitled to receive the sacred donations. They are in charge of the sacrificial offerings. The sweet savor of the burnt offerings was for God, but the flesh was for the priests. However, the priest would have no territorial share among the Israelites. The Levites must set aside 1/10 of the tithe they received as a gift to God. Any atonement must be done by the priests. God established the punishment for violating Sabbath law as death by stoning. However, some Israelites still challenged Moses and Aaron. This time, Moses was really angry and asked God not to respect their offerings. God opened the earth and swallowed them. Fire from God consumed the 250 men. The day after, the rest of the Israelites accused Moses and Aaron for killing the people of God. Then God sent a plague, and Moses told Aaron to put fire and incense on the altar and to make atonement for them. But 14,700 people still died. Next, Moses and Aaron performed the ritual law of the red heifer. The red heifer must be without spot, no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. Eleazar the priest, a son of Aaron, took it outside the camp, observed its slaughter, and took some of its blood with his finger, and sprinkled it 7 times toward the tabernacle. Then it was burned in its entirety, and the ash was used to create the water of separation for purification of sin. Hearing so many complaints from his people, Moses also complained, asking God to kill him. Miriam and Aaron too protested against Moses for marrying an Ethiopian. God rebuked them and punished Miriam with leprosy, and she ended up being shut out of the camps for 7 days. Then many battles took place. In principle, when the Israelites followed the command from God, they prevailed. When they didn't, they lost. Before entering Canaan, the Israelites camped in Moab. The Moabites were the descendants of Lot's incestuous relation with his elder daughter. The king of Moab commanded the prophet Balaam to curse the Israelites for him. God came and forbade Balaam to do so, because the Israelites were blessed. Against God's warning, Balaam departed, but God placed an angel in Balaam's way. When his donkey swerved from the road, Balaam beat it with a stick. God allowed the donkey to speak and allowed Balaam to see the angel, and Balaam bowed down to the ground. The angel told Balaam only to say what he was told. So instead of cursing the Israelites, Balaam blessed them, saying, God has not beheld iniquity in Jacob, neither has he seen perverseness in Israel. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout of a king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. He has, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. Enraged, King Balak of Moab dismissed Balaam. Then he went away. Thus the children of Israel remained in the land of the Moab. During their stay, some Israelites began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. They offered sacrifices, ate the meat, and bowed down to Baal Peor and other Moab gods. God became angry and said to Moses, Take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, so that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. Moses commanded the judges of Israel to slay every man who worshipped Baal-peor. Then, under the instruction of God, the Israelites attacked the Midianites. Phinehas, the grandson of Aaron, slew every man, including 5 kings of Midian. The children of Israel took all the women of Midian and all the little ones captives. They took the spoil of all their cattle, all their flocks, and all their goods. They burned all their cities and all their castles with fire. Despite the victory, Moses was angry because they spared the women. He commanded that they too had to be slain because they caused the Israelites to worship Baal-peor. So the Israelites killed every boy and every woman who were not virgins. Then they divided the spoils amongst them, while leaving some for the Levites who were in charge of the tabernacle of the Lord. While the congregation was weeping before the door of the tabernacle, an Israelite Simeonite man came with a Midianite Arab woman. Phinehas, Aaron's grandson, rose with a javelin and thrust it to the man and woman. Then the plague that had been inflicted upon the Israelites stopped, after killing 24,000 people. God was pleased with Phinehas for his zealousness and for making atonement for the children of Israel, and gave his covenant of peace and everlasting priesthood for him and his seed. Nevertheless, God still commanded Moses to smite all the Midianites for this sin. As prophesied, Miriam and Aaron died before entering Canaan. Moses took a census of Israelite men 20 years old and older, all who were able to war for Israel. Then Moses dealt with the division of the land while laying down the law of inheritance. For example, inheritance are only for sons, except for daughters whose father left no sons. Women may only marry men from their father's tribe, so that no inheritance will pass from one tribe to another, etc. Joshua, son of Nun, was a man who was appointed by the Spirit of God. Joshua was favored by Moses because of his bravery and his faith to Yahweh. Joshua's first battle was against the Amalekites, descendants of Esau, Jacob's elder brother. During this battle, Moses commanded Joshua to lead the fight. On this battle, a miraculous thing happened. When Moses held up his hands, the Israelites prevailed, but when he let his hands down, the Amalekites prevailed. So Aaron and Hur held Moses' hand until the sun set, and finally Joshua managed to defeat the Amalekites. Despite the victory, God still ordered an eternal war against the Amalekites. When Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, heard about the victory, he brought his daughter and 2 grandsons to Moses. Jethro said, "Blessed be the Lord, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods." Then he made a burnt offering and sacrificed for God. Finally, the Israelites arrived at the border of Canaan. Moses sent Joshua and Caleb to spy the region. Joshua and Caleb came back and brought information that the land was indeed flowing with milk and honey. The cities were large, fortified, and surrounded by powerful people, descendants of Black Ham. They even saw giants, descendants of Anakim. Here again, the Israelites protested against Moses and Aaron. They even bid to stone them. God was angry at the provocation, so God slew them in the desert. But Moses said the other nations would say that the Lord was unable to bring the Israelites to the land he promised them. Moses asked God to pardon them. God spared their lives, but God also said that none would see the land he promised except Caleb and Joshua. Meanwhile, the rest of the ungrateful people would die in the desert, and their children would be wandering in the desert for 40 years. The Israelites repented and set out to the land God promised. Moses told them that they would not succeed without God in their midst. They marched forward anyway, without Moses and the Ark of Covenant. Sure enough, the descendants of Black Ham dealt them a shattering blow. Finally, Moses, the servant of the Lord, died in the land of Moab, a mountainous tract of land in modern-day Jordan, running along the eastern shore of the Dead Sea, before entering the Promised Land. Moses was 120 years old when he died and was still in a good shape.